Hello and welcome to Halcyon Blink. My name's Ron Rising, I'm going to be your host for this episode. And on this edition, I want to take you back to a simpler time when driving games were just driving games. And third-person open-world games didn't exist. Driver 2. A little bit of background. The original Driver game was basically, as it says in the title, a driving game. The premise being that you're an undercover police officer trying to use driving as a means to take down the criminal underworld. Again, simpler time, the idea that you could just drive and beat criminals. In the second game they decided to up the ante, because you could get out of your car. Now, of course, GTA had done this a couple of years earlier, but the difference being the top-down, over the overly cartoonistic look had already been done by GTA twice, I think, by that point, because you've also got GTA 1969, or at least it was set in London in 1969. This game took the 3D element and applied it to that premise, so you can get in and out of the car. Your main protagonist, by the name of Tanner, can get out of the car. Now, why am I dwelling on this? Because this was pretty dope when I was a kid. The idea that you could jump out of the car that you trashed and jump into a new one and carry on the game was amazing. The original game, you couldn't do this. You only had a finite amount of health in your vehicle, and if you were, say, being pursued by the police, then you kind of had to rely on your driving skills to be as good as it could be. In this game, you didn't have to do that. If you trashed your car and you didn't want to give the controller to your brother because it was his turn to play, and the rule was you only give the controller to your brother when you die, you don't have to. You just jump out of the car and you hop into something else, and then you've got to make a whole other rule saying you can only do that once, blah, blah, blah. As far as the rest of the game is concerned, the graphics, whoo, bad, terrible, really, really bad. Now, for the time, blocky, lacking in any real depth, but you've got to give the creators props for the fact that there were multiple maps, so that if you wanted to just free roam, for instance, you could go to Cuba, I believe you could go to Los Angeles. There was probably a third location, or maybe I'm giving it too much credit for that. As far as the driving mechanics were concerned, it didn't really vary from vehicle to vehicle. Not in the same way that GTA has managed these days, where every single vehicle has some kind of nuance. It has some oversteer or understeer, its acceleration or its torque are a little bit different, the way it feels under steering, stuff like that. In this game, it was more just about top speed. If memory serves, you had a couple of vehicles that you knew were going to be super quick, others that weren't quite so quick, but in terms of handling, they all felt the same. If I'm perfectly honest, I preferred the driving mechanics in the first game to the second game, because they just felt like the lift-off oversteer was easier to achieve, drifting around corners and things like that, and the braking mechanics of being able to swing the vehicle however you wanted it. In the second game, it loses a little bit of that, from my opinion. You also have a story mode which tries. This cutscenes are, again, not well edited in terms of their graphics, and I think it tried way too hard to be this cool crime thriller without it really being all that interesting. This Kane and Vasquez and this mysterious guy that no one knows what he looks like, blah, blah, blah. It's something you've seen a million times even up until that point. But I wanted to touch on this game because it was one of those moments in gaming. It was one of those times where you saw something completely new and changed the game. It opened the door for games after the fact to be able to copy the mechanic and then utilize it for better effect. Grand Theft Auto being perhaps the biggest beneficiary of this, which is ironic considering that up until that point, GTA 3, they'd been top down and the graphics had been reasonably okay, but certainly nothing special. And in fact, I would argue some of them are quite poorly designed. Some of the graphics, they don't look like cars. They're kind of square and robotic, whereas in this game they tried to push the boat out as best they could. Now, maybe the execution wasn't great in hindsight, and Driver 3 certainly isn't on the level of GTA 3, but the idea that they were able to pilot this, I really appreciate. And it certainly, even if it wasn't an original mechanic, at least I don't remember anything prior to this that utilized the same mechanic in a 3D environment. It was the thing that had the most impact on me, and I was desperate to play it for my birthday. That's one of the games that I got for my birthday, Driver 2. And it was fun for what it was. And Yes, it hasn't aged particularly well now that the mechanic is in everything. You can get in and out of cars in virtually every game that there is. But at the time, the idea that your game was centered around that and that yet you could get out and run around, and the running mechanics was kind of weird as well. It looked like some kind of stick man with a rod up his ass. It still impressed me for the time. As far as a game rating though, it's not great. It's a 4. Not much replayability right now. I think it would be a real slog to get through if you did decide to replay this game. But I have to give it some props because again, it inspired a generation of gamers to be able to look for that kind of mechanic and enjoy the ability to be able to free roam as much as they wanted to. So Driver 2, for those that want to go back and see a bit of gaming history, that's what I'd recommend it for, but I would not recommend to go back and play it. So thanks very much for watching this episode of Halcyon Blink. Please like, share, subscribe, check out some of the other content creators in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, and as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next episode of Halcyon Blink.